with my very late February wrap-up. So I'm not doing my March TBR with it because it's currently March 28th and this is probably going to be going up after the end of March anyway, and it's frustrating, but my computer died on me so I couldn't edit videos, which is why there hasn't really been any videos up. I didn't know when I was going to be able to edit videos again, so I just didn't film anything. I read 5 books in February, which according to my buying that I did in February, I did a lot less reading than I should have, or a lot more buying than I should have. Either way, let's get into the books I finished. So the first book I read in February, Augusta the First by Katherine Kimbrough, and from what I've read online, this is actually written by a guy. This is just a pen name for these romance novels, which is a gothic romance. This is the first book in a series. They were written back in the 70s, I think. My mom gave me this. She gave me all the books that she had, and she wanted me to read them. So I've read the first book. I'm not really sure if I'm going to continue. I kind of want to give the other books a chance, but I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. It was enjoyable. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be for it being a romance, even a gothic romance. There wasn't all the heaving bosom and all that you usually get in tacky romance. It was about a very strong leading lady. The only thing is she pretty much just got what she wanted, so there's a lot of adultery in it. There is a lot of disturbing things, like somebody dies and she's like, oh well, and they're real close to her. Actually, I think that happens a couple of times in this. One thing that I did like is one of the men she is with, she makes a statement that he prefers the company of other men, which is kind of nice-ish way for the period of saying that he was gay. So that was interesting reading that in this, because it is based in, what year is it supposed to be based in? It starts in 1742. My bangs are going crazy. So this starts in 1742 and it goes over several years, but it was very interesting to read. One of my biggest pet peeves with this, other than like the adultery, was that she claims not to be a religious person almost throughout the book, and she actually looks down on people for believing in religion. And then at the end of the book, something happens and all of a sudden she's like religious and she's praying. And it's like, okay, well, why? Like, why are you making fun of these people for being religious? Like, kind of looking down on them. She's not really making fun of them. It's mainly, there's this one guy that she's interested in and she wants to have sex with. And he's married and he doesn't want to cheat on his wife. So she looks down on him because he's religious and he doesn't want to cheat on his wife. Meh. But I enjoyed the overall story. Like, that was interesting, and how she was very empowering, and especially for the time period, she could negotiate better than any man. So that was interesting. Just like her as a person, I didn't really care for. I guess the character, she's not real. 3 out of 5 stars. And the next books I read were Bad Taste in Boys and Bad Hair Day by Carrie Harris. And these are a duology. Bad Taste in Boys is essentially like teenage zombie apocalypse kind of thing. Although they're not really zombies, they're just kind of zombies. It's hard to explain. I really enjoyed this. The girl is kind of flighty, but she wants to be a doctor, and so she's very serious about that, and she's really geeky because she just geeks out on doctor related things, anything that has to do with being a doctor or anything that doctors do. She geeks out over it, which was pretty cool. The only thing that I didn't like about this is that the cure kind of just fell in her lap, and it's just like, well, that's convenient. And I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. Another thing I had an issue with in this book, other than the fact that the cure for the zombie thing just kind of fell in her lap, is that she's supposed to be 17 in this book, and it reads more like a middle grade, which was a little frustrating. I don't know, it was corny and entertaining. The only thing that I really didn't like was that the cure just kind of fell in her lap. It's just like, oh, hey, here it is. Now for Bad Hair Day. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a little better than Bad Taste in Boys, just barely. It kind of has to do with werewolves, and they make a lot of really bad Twilight references in it, which made it hilarious. So even though it was corny, it was still entertaining, and it was a little more entertaining than the first one. And the cure doesn't just like fall in her lap. Like, she actually has to work to figure out the solution to this problem. So that was better than the first one, so a little higher rating on this one. I kind of would like to see how this author progresses from here, because like I said, this book was a lot better than the first one, so it'd be interesting if there was a third book and seeing how much further the author progresses in her writing. The next book I read was a graphic novel, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's Robert Louis Stevenson, but I'm trying to get... Okay, I'm not going to be able to read those names for the illustrations. The illustrations were good, but how they cut the story was awful. Just awful. I ended up giving this a 2 out of 5 stars, which is really sad. I haven't read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If it's like your favorite classic and you've read it several times, then this might be an interesting thing for you. The only thing for me is that it kept cutting off. Like, one page they'd be in one location, and the next page they'd be somewhere totally different, and it wouldn't say like meanwhile over here, or it wouldn't say that afternoon or anything like that to actually show progression of time and changing location. It just was like, boom, hey, they're here now, and it's like, did I miss something? And I was totally lost for almost the whole thing, which frustrated me the entire time. I enjoyed the graphics, like, I enjoyed the pictures, but trying to keep with the story and figure out what was going on was just a headache. So I'm actually going to give this to my mom, I think, if she's read the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde actual book. I believe she has, but I don't know if it's one that she would be interested in having a graphic novel that just kind of skips around everywhere. I might just be getting rid of this. And the last book I read in February was Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. So for those of you who are new to the Cassandra Clare books, I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. On her website, she recommends reading them as trilogies, so the first 3 Mortal Instruments books, and then the Infernal Devices books, and then the second 3 Mortal Instruments books. So I've only read the first 3 Mortal Instruments. This is the first in the Infernal Devices, and Magnus Bane is in this. I was so excited to have a character from the Mortal Instruments in the Infernal Devices series. It was amazing, and I loved getting to find out more about his character. One issue that I had was that Will's voice and Will as a character sounded a lot like Jace. Like, I couldn't differentiate the two in the very beginning. But as Will kind of grew as a character, it pulled away from the Jace kind of persona, and he got his own personality. So it evened out in the end for me. But in the very beginning, right after reading The Mortal Instruments, jumping into the Infernal Devices, I got major Jace vibes from Will, and it was very distracting, and it made it where I couldn't concentrate on him as a character because he just sounded like Jace. Other than that, I really love this book. I loved getting into a little bit more of the history of the Shadowhunters. It was very interesting, and at the end of the month I had already picked up book 2, The Clockwork Prince. But I didn't finish it in February, so you will have to wait until my March wrap-up to find out what I thought of that. So these are the 5 books that I read in February. I should have read a lot more because I bought a whole lot of books, which you will see if you watch my February book haul. But that's all I have for this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!